as well as lumbar enlargements. This is probably closer to that 1/2 inch in diameter that we talked about. The bulk of the cord is about 1/2 inch in diameter. So here on this particular portion of it, you can see I've actually peeled back the meninges, just like we could peel back the meninges on the brain. So the meninges of the brain is continuous with the meninges covering the spinal cord all the way to its most inferior recesses. Same 3 layers, dura, arachnoid, and the pia mater itself is still tightly covering the white matter of the cord itself. Now on this particular piece, this one is one of those that still has the spinal nerve. This is one pair of those 31 pair of spinal nerves that are still attached. And recall, the number 31 is significant, and the fact that they are always mixed is also of importance. So if we kind of peel back the meninges on this particular portion, can you see that little red vessel that runs up and down? You know, it follows the longitudinal axis. That red vessel right there, it follows the longitudinal axis of the spinal cord. So that red vessel is the same as this red vessel right here, or this red vessel right here. That's your spinal artery. The spinal artery is always found in close proximity to this structure, the AMF, your anterior median fissure. By default, a fissure is always a slit-like opening. PMS, posterior median sulcus, a sulcus is just a shallow groove. So this one will never be as significant as far as structure is concerned. So you can always use the spinal artery to orient the spinal cord. Why is this important? Because these are 2 of the structures that you have to be aware of. Anterior gray horn or ventral gray horn, as well as posterior or dorsal. On test day, you'll have to be able to tell me which is which. So it all begins right here with the spinal artery, anterior median fissure. So by default, these have to be your anterior gray horns. Just 1, 2, 3. It follows in logical progression. So if you look closely on the lateral view right here, transverse view, you can actually see those same horns that we can observe here in a colored illustration or here on the model. Now this material has actually been immersed in Carosafe, a preservative, for quite a while. So in reality, what should appear as gray is actually white, and what's white, the white matter, is actually a little bit gray. The colors are just reversed on this segment because it's been exposed to the Carosafe for a period of time. So medial to these gray horns here, this is another term you might be familiar with, is the gray commissure. The gray commissure here conjoins the left and the right sides of the gray matter. And medial to the gray commissure here is where we find the central canal, just like you can see it here on the model. So the central canal medial to the gray commissure. I find it somewhat beautiful to look at the organization of those spinal nerves as they exit the cord itself. Isn't that quite exquisite? It's really, really pretty. And we have another set just like it on the posterior side. So by default, sensory information arrives through these spinal nerves. Motor information or commands exit through these spinal nerves. Because as we said, anterior always motor, posterior always sensory. So that's likewise, that's somewhat important to remember. likewise, we can see the pia mater here as well, tightly enclosing the spinal tracts or the white columns. On this particular model, specifically, we'll start here. This is my mixed nerve, just like it's drawn on the board. And so here, this is my dorsal root ganglion. You don't have a ventral root ganglion, only a dorsal. So sensory, this is always sensory, so dorsal root. And this is my ventral root, carrying a motor command to some peripheral effector. Here we have the dura mater, the arachnoid mater, pia mater of the model itself, spinal artery, anterior median fissure, posterior median sulcus. Regardless of whether you see this or you see this, and we're also going to look at it on a slide. It's basically, it's the same, it's just the same information presented 3 different ways. So we have a slide we're going to look at.